US were smart. They ruled them financially, not physically.
With the army and whatnot.
Osama bin Laden himself was like a CIA informant or agent as well. Or he was trained by the CIA. Germany essentially stopped America from expanding.
Well,
Australia, they went and kept killing the indigenous people.
Japan was one of the countries in the League of Nations. No way.
yeah, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
The Mujahideen were actually the beginning of the Taliban. So the Taliban actually was, in many ways, Bill Clinton. When he was in office, he was getting BJ from his 22-year-old secretary.
Up on stage one day and he's like, I'm bringing back slavery.
Let's watch how America became a superpower.
Yeah, this was right after Britain had its downfall. So the US actually took this.
Took over, yeah. Let's watch that, guys.
The modern United States is the most powerful country in human history, with over 800 military bases and 37% of global military spending. The US
Jeez
has become the
Louise.
leader of a vast, interconnected global system that has helped usher in an era of unprecedented prosperity and low levels of conflict. To understand America's position in the world and why it's so pivotal for world politics as we know it, you have to go back to the country's founding, back to when America wasn't a global power in any sense of the word. During the first 70 years of its existence, the United States expanded in both territory and influence in North America, eventually reaching the Pacific Ocean, in a wave of expansionism that resulted in the wholesale slaughter of the indigenous people who populated the continent. But early Americans were deeply divided as to whether the country should expand beyond the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. This became a major debate after the Civil War, when some leaders, like post-war Secretary of State Seward, argued that America should push to become a global power. Seward succeeded in pushing a plan to purchase Alaska from Russia, but his attempts to buy Greenland and Iceland, as well as annexed territory in the Caribbean, were all blocked by Congress. That's because some Americans,
Surprising, huh?
many on
Surprising, yeah.
had a strong anti-imperialist bent. These people worried about America getting more involved in global politics, as well as having to integrate...
Wow, what a surprise. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah, so
whoa.
that's the reason why they didn't want to invade other countries.
Because they're scared that some brown cunts are gonna be in their culture.
Yeah.
That's why the commoners didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I think they're more fearful of like mixed breeding
Yes.
as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
hella racist.
Yeah.
Fucking even in Australia, they went and kept killing the indigenous people.
That was the British, but
Rest in
Hey.
peace, because most of the time as well, it was the disease that killed a lot of the population.
Mm-hmm. That is true. That is true.
had major checks on the imperialist urge to expand. But something was happening in the late 1800s that would change the debate about American expansionism. The Industrial Revolution produced explosive economic growth, and the bigger US economy required a more centralized state and bureaucracy to manage the growing economy. Power became concentrated in the federal government, making it easier for expansionist presidents, like William McKinley, to unilaterally push American influence abroad. The key turning point came in 1898, when President McKinley dragged the country into war with Spain over Cuba, despite some intense domestic opposition. The rising United States easily defeated the moribund Spanish Empire, acquiring Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines in the process.
A floating
Over
island
the
of
next
trash,
2 years,
remember?
the US would annex the Kingdom of Hawaii, Wake Island, and American Samoa. A few years later, the US took control of the Panama Canal Zone and sent troops to occupy the Dominican Republic. It also purchased the American Virgin Islands. This period of rapid acquisition of far-flung territories put the US on the map as a truly global power. During this time, America also began using its influence to protect its growing commercial and military interests abroad, installing pro-American regimes in places like Nicaragua, and playing a major role in international diplomacy regarding the Western presence in China. World War I showed just how much America's influence had grown. Not only was American intervention a decisive factor in the war's end, but President Wilson attended the Paris Peace Conference, which ended the war, and attempted to set the terms of the peace. He spearheaded America's most ambitious foreign policy initiative yet, an international organization called the League of Nations, designed to promote
That
peace
sounds
and
villainous.
cooperation.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Like a
The League,
old-timey
a
League of
wholesale effort to
Extraordinary
remake
Gentlemen.
global
Yeah.
politics, showed just how ambitious American foreign policy had become. Yet isolation is
Hold on a minute. You're telling me Japan was one of the countries in the League of Nations? No way.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is crazy.
all it takes is one bad decision.
Congress blocked the United States from joining the League of Nations, dooming Wilson's project. During the Great Depression and the rise of Hitler, the US was much more focused on its own region than on European affairs. Ultimately, America's ever-growing entanglements abroad made it impossible for it to stay out of global affairs entirely. In East Asia, the growing Japanese Empire posed a direct threat to American possessions and troops, bringing the United States and Japan into conflict. This culminated in the Pearl Harbor attack, bringing the United States into World War II. World War II would transform America's global presence forever. The United States was the only major power to avoid economic ruin during the war.
Shout out Oppenheimer. Great movie, by the way. Great movie.
I haven't watched it. I gotta watch it.
So you're telling me Germany essentially stopped America from expanding?
Well,
If you want to put it like that, yeah.
but
So-
they did make a lot of money, though. They made so much money from that period.
Dude, yeah, you're right. It's like a backstabbing friend. It's like, oh, I'm here to help you out, but give me money.
Mm-hmm.
So you take all the money. Oh, thanks for the money, by the way. Oh, we'll come in as heroes with the money you gave us. Establish ourselves as number one.
Yeah.
Listen to what we say now.
I mean, it made them look desirable.
Yeah.
They were expanding and they were powerful. That's a very desirable friend to have at your side.
Yeah, I guess.
As such, it was in a unique position to set the terms of the peace, and, with the aim of preventing another war in mind, it took advantage. The most famous example of this is the creation of the United Nations. The UN Charter set up a system of international law prohibiting wars of conquest, like the ones waged by the Nazis and the Japanese. It also served as a forum in which the international community could weigh in on disputes and help resolve them. This way, the Americans hoped, great powers could resolve their differences through compromise and law rather than war. But while the UN is the most famous of the post-war institutions, it isn't the only one. 730 delegates from all 44 allied nations came together in a small vacation haven in New Hampshire. Their goal? To establish a global financial system that would prevent another Great Depression and World War. The resulting agreement, called the Bretton Woods Agreement, ultimately became the backbone of the global financial system, resulting in the World Bank.
Oh, come on. Oh, come on. We all know this is bullshit. The IMF and the World Bank are basically owned by the United States. They owe trillions of dollars to them, and they don't have to pay it back.
Legit, you're right, Colin.
Insane.
I agree with you.
And the United Nations? Don't even get me started on that.
This is a tale to be spread to keep the people happy.
Well, we've seen the League of Nations and how it worked.
This is crazy, bro, because I don't know what the fuck all this shit is, but I'm liking it. It's amazing.
The irony is, it took World War II to stop countries from conquesting one another and saying, look, we had enough of this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty
Wow.
much.
By creating these institutions, the United States committed itself to being deeply involved in the world's problems. The issue, though, is that the world's second largest power, the Soviet Union, saw things differently. World War II had made allies out of the democratic West and communist East in the fight against Hitler, but that couldn't last. The United States saw Soviet expansion in Eastern Europe and elsewhere as a direct threat to its vision of a free-trading, democratic world.
To a substantial degree, in one form or another, socialism has spread the shadow of human regimentation over most of the nations of the earth. And the shadow is encroaching upon our own liberty.
We need some freedom,
Fearful of
brother.
Soviet
Look at the VFX of that shit,
other
right?
European nations
Eagle
created the North
sounds.
Atlantic Treaty Organization, a military alliance meant to stop Russia from invading other countries in Europe. Globally, the US committed to a strategy called containment, so called because it was aimed at containing the spread of communism everywhere on the globe. This new global struggle meant that the US had to exert influence everywhere, all the time. Instead of disbanding the massive military machine created for World War II, the wheels mostly kept turning. This had two main results. First, the US was pulled into unlikely alliances with countries like Saudi Arabia, Israel, and South Korea, seeing each of them as bulwarks against communist influence in their region. Secondly, the US began intervening, often secretly, in dozens of countries to contain Soviet influence. Sometimes this meant propping up sympathetic dictators, like in Iran. Other times, it meant supplying rebels with arms and money, like in Afghanistan in 1979 and Nicaragua in 1985.
Yeah, that's crazy because the Mujahideen were actually the beginning of the Taliban. So the Taliban actually was, in many ways,
Funded by America.
yeah. Unfortunately, that was a unfortunate creation.
There is a conspiracy theory that Osama bin Laden himself was like a CIA informant or agent as well. Or he was
Right.
trained by the CIA. In fact.
And hey, look, it so happens to be coincidentally that a lot of these countries had oil.
Afghanistan?
Yeah. What a
Iran
coincidence.
and all these places,
Afghanistan, I'm surprised. No, it was to reduce Soviet influence because they were bordering the
Yeah.
Soviet Union. But see, you know what's the irony? US dabbled their finger in Iran, and now when Iran comes back and say, "Hey, we're independent," US is like sanctions.
hmm
Whoa, I'm starting to notice something here, mate.
Yeah.
Starting to notice. Let's keep going.
Over the course of the Cold War, the US intervened in hundreds of disputes around the globe, ending up with a complicated set of alliances, tensions, and relationships in basically every corner of the Earth. After the Berlin Wall fell, the US could have withdrawn from the system, severing ties with its allies and drawing down the size of its military. And while the US did decrease military spending, much of the military infrastructure and alliances from the Cold War remained. Presidents George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton decided that it was in both America and the world's interests for the United States, now the sole superpower on Earth, to continue actively managing global affairs.
We should be and we must be peacemakers.
NATO.
Yo, isn't it crazy that Bill Clinton, when he was in office, he was getting BJ from his 22-year-old secretary?
What?
Crazy?
What do you mean?
You don't know this.
Clinton was getting a BJ from his secretary.
From his secretary while being married.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
That's crazy, bro.
Do you know any world history?
Fuck
At
me,
all?
bro. I'm telling you, growing up, history, as soon as I heard history, I was like, give me a fucking thing, because I'm gonna shoot myself. I never enjoyed history, but
I
But
think-
this man was getting it, bro. This
I
man.
think this guy watched too many porn videos where the teacher was about to teach world history, but then it went to another
Mhm.
I think you're speaking for yourself, man. I don't watch porn. Let's be clear with that.
He would have had it at what? Like maybe on VHS? Probably on vinyl? Just listening to it.
Oh my god, Bill Clinton, man. Shout out. What a player. What a player.
Hey man, that just seems to be the life in office.
Yeah. I mean, he was the leader of the whole freaking world,
Free
pretty
world.
much, right? Huh?
Man needed to calm himself down, you feel me?
He was stressed out. He was stressed out.
So much freedom to spread to the world.
NATO, created solely as a tool for countering the Soviet Union, stayed together and even expanded, a way of keeping European nations united in the absence of the Soviet threat.
How's that working now?
Washington's support for countries
Mhm.
like Israel and Japan stayed intact, ostensibly as a means of preventing war in their respective regions. The global system of alliances and institutions created to keep the peace during the Cold War became permanent, as did the American military and political commitments necessary to keep them running. This system remains in operation today, and no leading American politician since the Cold War has seriously called for dismantling it. Except, perhaps, for Donald Trump.
Woo!
It's a contradictory.
Shout out to
Oh,
Mr. Trump.
Don't woo that. Don't say woo.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying he's freaking president again, huh? 47th president.
45th and 47th,
Yeah.
baby.
What a guy! Oh my god, the 47th president
Is
of
that
the United States.
Is that really a good thing though?
Oh well.
47th time his wig is intact. That's what's up.
there could be a wake-up call to the Europeans who've been sipping their British tea or whatever they're drinking.
By the way, if you want to find out more about Donald Trump, watch our first video on our channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out to our first episode. But coming back to this episode, Europe is not spending enough on their defense. They've been sitting on their asses waiting for America to just defend them. But
And Ukraine's been getting a lot of money from the United States. It's interesting to see what they're gonna do. If Donald Trump is gonna cut him off, or if he's gonna keep giving him money, or we don't know what's in the next 4 years. All we can hope is for some entertaining times. That's all.
I gotta figure out a quick solution to getting out of being drafted.
Oh,
Let's keep watching what Mr. Donald Trump has to say here in this video.
Things about these commitments. But he's consistently argued that American allies are not paying the US enough for its protection, and
What did I
questioned the
say?
value of free trade. That calls NATO and even the World Trade Organization into question.
At some point, we have to say, you know what? We're better off if Japan protects itself against this maniac in North Korea. We're better off, frankly, if South Korea is going to start to protect itself.
Saudi Arabia, nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia, absolutely.
This is a sharp divergence from
He's like, fuck all these.
dominated U.S. foreign policy since 1945, and something closer to the isolationism that came before it. So will President Trump act on some of candidate Trump's ideas and reverse decades worth of institution building and alliances? We'll find out soon enough.
Yes, we will. We
That's
will
facts,
find
though.
out.
Just wait till he's up on stage one day and he's like, I'm bringing back slavery.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
Por favor.
Get out.
That's crazy. What videos were those? Just like informing us about history. Like, not being a history nerd, I just learned a lot about these history stuff happening fucking from the Dutch to the
What I've
fucking
learned
England
today, what
to
I've
the
learned
fucking
today
US. It's crazy.
is that Sanjeev, we need to send you to school again.
Right back, go back to prep, learn your ABCs, go through the whole process.
I think you even need to learn, like, you know, what the fuck history even means.
You know, without history, we wouldn't know how to build such elegant boats.
Without the Dutch, hey,
Exactly.
how would who would be carrying these boats? Who's going to carry the boats?
But what I want to know is, what do you guys take from each of these videos? Like, what do you notice about the rise?
Actually, I wanted to bring up a point on that. Because it's the same thing over and over, right? They go through the same ups and downs, but each time, in each three of these examples, it seems like the next one has learnt a little bit or adapted a little bit to be that bit more successful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, rather than with the Dutch and the British, where they're just colonizing everything and taking everything, the US did it differently and went, well, we're going to let you do your own thing, but we're going to help.
Strategic. They did more strategic.
Yeah, treated it or did it more in an economically viable way. You keep the peace amongst everybody rather than trying to just stampede over the top of it.
I think you're right, Jack. Yeah, that's where US were smart. They ruled them financially, not physically.
With the army and whatnot.
Yeah.
But you know what I think? Now that obviously USA is on its decline, the empire is coming towards its end.
Yeah.
And we can see that clearly. The next superpower, the next big player is China, right? For an average
India
Joe,
as well.
and India as well. But for me, an average Joe, I don't really give a shit about these empires and whatnot, what they're doing.
Sure.
But what I care about is my own, safety, and I want to wake up in the morning and have my coffee. I want to be able to go to my job, take a shit, come back, whatever, right?
Like, ideally, what you're saying is you're living a comfortable lifestyle you're happy with, and you would rather see that not change with the introduction of a brand new world.
When there's a new regime, everything's going to change. So does that mean that I need to go to China and get a Chinese wife now? Come on. I mean, like, I'm not talking Singaporean Chinese. I'm not talking Malaysian Chinese. I'm talking chicken feet and MSG loving Chinese. Hey, I might just have to go there and flex on them, and I might have to get a wife over there.
I mean, does that mean you'll start eating pork?
No.
Oh,
I don't think this is going to work very well, brother.
Yes, brother.
Get a fortune cookie, see what it says.
But come on, I love Hokkien noodles. Come on.
Everything you just said about waking up and doing your work, drinking coffee and all that. This is the American order you're talking about. So in the Chinese order, it's going to be different.
You're going to have to live in your office.
You're going to have to live in your office. You're going to have to start calling people your comrades.
Mm-hmm.
And then, any small action you do that doesn't associate with the government order, like you said, whoop,
Yeah.
social credit score.
Yeah.
So you can live in the suburbs with this club.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
Live in the burbs. Crazy stuff happening. Like, I didn't know all this shit, took place.
Yeah.
Like, because I've never been involved in history and just like fucking everything over spice to fucking building the ships and all that. It's just crazy.
Here's the thing. Why we need to learn about this is that when the power changes again, when China comes in, we can use that to our advantage.
What's gonna happen with fucking AI coming over?
Oh, man.
What's gonna be the new war? The AI war? Chemical war? What's next?
Thank you, everyone, for watching our video. We appreciate your support. So watch the videos that we linked in the description as well. Big shout out to these guys. Also, let us know what you would like to see from us next.